All right, everybody. There we are. Welcome to Current State of the Digital Art Market. I am here with four esteemed guests. Here with Kenny, here with Dirk, here with Aleksandra, here with Sophie. And let's get loosened up here. Let's pass this microphone around and let's each introduce ourselves. Kenny, you tried to hide. You were over in the corner. I feel you should go first.
I'm not even, I haven't had my 5th cup of coffee yet. And I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Okay.
I did too yesterday.
My phone off. I had back surgery and I can't really sit down.
Oh no.
What am I supposed to do?
Introduction.
All right. I'm not terribly professional, as you can get a sense. But I mean, look, I'm with very esteemed people, which I'm much more interested to hear what they have to say. I wear all the hats you can wear in the art world for 35 years. I am an artist, a writer. I write for Artnet, and then I've done some books, a book on digital art that came out in 2023. I think 6 people bought it. It was good. I'm really good at time. No way. Oh, well, I'm really good at market timing, but I've been collecting since the beginning. I'm self-taught. I studied philosophy, and then there was no job for an undergraduate philosophy degree, so I hid in law school with zero intent to practice law, but it was a good place to hide to figure out what I wanted to do. Life is so short, and I teach a lot at the University of Zurich and various international universities, and I always encourage every single person I meet, whether it's in the supermarket or anywhere, life is so short, you have to find your passion and do what you love and somehow make it your vocation. And I'm still changing and figuring out what I want to do in my life. I'm long in the tooth, you can see by the hair, I'm old. And I'm just like, I'm doing everything I can to have 2 feet firmly implanted in art, which I'm fanatical about. I made my first digital animation in 1993. I've made around 350 or so. I show with galleries. And again, like the first art class I was ever in, I taught. And I'm just fanatical about art. And I think it's a shame the art world, the traditional art world, is operating on a model based 200 years ago. It's like Lloyd's of London with 2 generally old white men shaking hands over a deal. And it's sad and it's really disheartening. And if I didn't have an avenue to write about it, I would be really depressed. But digital art is people dismissing AI and all of the, AI is not going to destroy civilization. We're doing a damn good job. I'm scared to read the newspaper every day. So that's it. I collect art. I live with it from floor to ceiling. You're all welcome to visit me in New York. I hope to find another country to live in soon for the time being. Switzerland would be the best of all worlds, but I need to sell some more art. And that's it. So I have a lot of opinions. I write for Artnet. You could find them all there. And I love art.
Thank you, Kenny. No pressure. And Dirk. Yeah, no pressure, Dirk.
Yeah, morning. As you can tell from our dresses, I've been invited to be the counterpart for Kenny. So everything he is, I'm not. But we have one similarity. I do love art, and my walls are filled from floor to ceiling. I'm an art lawyer. I studied law and art management. I'm in my 7th job in the Christie's universe. I have been in London, in Germany, in London, in Switzerland, in London, in Germany. And I think AI or digitization of the art-making process is one of the most exciting things we are going to experience in our lives. So I want to be part of that, or at least I want to be close enough to witness what's going on, and I'm delighted to be here.
Oh, you have your wonderful. Thank you. Not a lawyer. I did contribute to Kenny's move to Switzerland by buying one of his NFTs, though, so there's that. My journey was a little bit different. I started in consulting, which was a little bit dry, but helped me pay my way through Sotheby's art business, which was a perfect career switch to go into the art world. But very shortly, I realized that traditional art world is not really my thing. And I did have a wonderful internship at Christie's, though. And then I shifted like 2015 to work for art startup. It was called .art, and we basically brought the top-level domain. So now you have .com, but now you also have .art. And after 6 years of doing that, digital artists were sort of like the most excited about it because they actually knew how to register a website. You would be amazed how many people still don't know how to register a website name. And so that kind of drew me into this rabbit hole, working with organizations such as Ars Electronica, Rhizome, and really discovering artists working with technology. And fast forwards the whole blockchain revolution. Now I am the head of art at Trilitech. So what is Trilitech? Trilitech facilitates the adoption for the Tezos blockchain. So in my role, I make sure that A, our infrastructure works, B, we have amazing arts programming, as many of you have noticed, including Digital Art Mile and the Paintbox exhibition, which I look forward to talking about more. And yeah, really excited to be here today.
Thank you. We just realized that we spoke one of our first panels together, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago. So it's nice to be speaking together again.
Lovely to see you.
My main hat, I wear several, but my main hat is working at Artnet. So I'm very focused on the data side. I find it fascinating to look at how the market moves, obviously understanding that the data is not the only point that determines an artwork's value. And so to balance that, my other hats are working for a family gallery in terms of private sales, and also an artist residency where we support artists in their career at our home in Spain. And that's a little bit to balance the heavy data market side focus of my life. And I feel like I was born into the art market. I lived in New York and Berlin and London. I've been following the market a little bit, and now I've followed it to Spain. I would love to go back to New York, but I think for the moment, like Kenny, I prefer to live somewhere else. So that's me. It's great to be here.
So as you can see, there's just wonderful diversity on this panel in terms of the different paths that people have followed to all intersect on this stage. And so I want to give each of you an open mic to speak about one topic of passion. When we talk about the current state of the digital art market, that can be a broad phrase. And so please grab one topic, speak on it, and then we'll work to connect some dots after the fact. And Kenny, I'm going to make you wait this time. Let's go to Sophie first.
Oh, wow, the pressure. I think the topic that I'm most fascinated by and that I've focused most of over the past years is the data side of the market. Obviously, working at art and having worked at Artnet for a long time, and let's take the elephant out of the room. Of course, you've probably heard about the Artnet and Artsy potential merger that's coming up. And so the art market data and online transactions have been a strong focus. I tentatively looked at some data for H1, which has not yet been completed this year, but to look at how the market has moved, and unfortunately, it hasn't improved according to our data, but I don't think you need data to realize that. You've probably been following the news. You've seen what has sold, or more likely, what has not sold in auctions. So of course, knowing that the data is not the only thing that determines, an artwork's value, I do think it's a strong indicator, and it's something reliable that you can look at. And this is why this has fascinated me so much.
Oh, actually, I have a wonderful build-up. So our panel, say 7 years ago, was actually about our data, like data in the art world. And back then I was an operations analyst, so this fascinated me incredibly. And I think building to your point of when people come into the ecosystem, they look for strong signals, and that kind of helps bring capital in, and they go for the artist that feels safe. Which brings me to the other point, what I'm passionate about. So over the 10 years, I am passionate about building an ecosystem that fosters growth and helps the artist, as you say, that mark. Like they can't come in and start selling for crazy amounts of money. There has to be that place that fosters, especially emerging digital artists. And what I've noticed over the years, it's quite different from the traditional art ecosystem where you have a clear artist trajectory. You graduate, you get your MFA, you have a show at the university, then you get written about, that you have a show. In the last 4 or 5 years, what I've seen, and especially arts on the blockchain, you have artists that can't afford an MFA still become very successful. And I think that's what really pulled me into the space. The amount of artists from underrepresented communities, from countries in the world where you don't have access to education, able to make a name for themselves, and also genres like poetry on the blockchain, and generally poetry as a form of art, they have a new opportunity. And I think especially across programming on Tezos, this is where you see probably the most opportunities for artists that are beginning of their journey. So this is definitely a very, very big area of mine for passion.
Amazing. And thank you for pulling it back to some points made earlier. Dirk.
Well, as we all know, art and data, we were all late to the party. I mean, other industries were 20 years ahead. So far, the whole kind of look at data and art has been driven by the idea of kind of a very intertwined development between the two. And as you say, pulling in money, pulling in investments, kind of developments, etc., etc. Now the market kind of seems to shift. And a gallerist said to me yesterday, well, we all need to prepare for the times when we go back to sell to connoisseurs rather than investors. And I wonder whether this is actually an opportunity to begin with, because it will allow us to look at digital technology as a media in art rather than an investment-driven whatever tool. And secondly, it might be very interesting to see how data can help us in that process.
We're all kind of segueing, passing the baton to each other with continuity between our points. And I think for me, talking about NFTs, so I first got involved with NFTs between 5 and 6 years ago, and there was no money at that time. There was a lot of artists, like well-known today, like Beeple, had never sold a single work of art in his entire life at that point. So I was one of the few people. I just wanted to, the art world always pays lip service to nurturing new audiences, but they have no interest. It's so territorial and they're just marking their space. They don't want new audiences. They don't want to reach out to young, and every article in the newspaper is that young people don't want to buy art. No fucking surprise that is, excuse my language. Why would they? And go into a gallery. I get thrown out of galleries just from the pants I'm wearing. They're vintage, by the way. But I mean, what is contemporary art? It's a reflection of the social, political, economic, and technological times we live in. We live in, technology defines, we're all addicted to these devices like appendages, and these are the defining moments of our generation, the generation before, and generations to come. And why wouldn't it be embraced? So I think when I first got involved with NFTs, I coined this word NFTism, and it gave me this incredible sense of community, collaboration, and communication that I hadn't experienced since there was a recession in the early 90s when I launched. And unfortunately, the NFT space cottoned on to the worst aspects of the traditional art world, mainly greed and cash grabbing substitutes for derivatives and stuff, and then some criminality. Meanwhile, you read all the time about how the art market is unregulated. I mean, that is the most absurd fallacy that I've ever heard in my life. There's more crime at Goldman Sachs in an hour, which I used to say, and now it's like in crypto, crypto crime is fueling North Korea, China, Russia. That's their main source of income. So I think for NFTs, where I coined this word NFTism, then the market collapsed. I got a tattoo, NFTism. And I never said I was normal. And then I changed it to post-NFTism when things changed. And it was and I was lambasted by the traditional art world when it was going up. And then they were like whirling dervishes, thrilled when it was going down, mocking me, going on both sides. And the fact is, we need to reduce the complexity to interface with wallets and cross crypto switching around. And we need less crime. I've been hacked. Ask me stories afterward about the last hack, which I wrote about in Artnet in October, which still has been going on until just recently. My wallet got hijacked with like 700 worthless NFTs that I really cared about deeply. And I had to like out-hack the hackers to get my NFTs back, which was my legacy of the last 6 years. And it was very important to me. And then the last thing, I know it's hard for me to shut up because no one listens to me at home. And I love art. I collect art. I'm very materialistic, I'll admit it. And having your whole art collection on your phone or your computer is not enough. I'll be frank, I make digital art for 30 years and I don't have enough in my collection. I think it behooves digital artists to make physical works. So whenever I have a piece in the fair, in the curated section of the fair, by Seth and Georg, which I'm really grateful for, and I hope you could see it. But every time I make a physical work, I made a whole exhibition in New York of robotically created paintings from digital files. I make an NFT and a physical. They're not connected because they'll always get separated, but at least you have an option to hang something and to put your hands on something, and I think that's important.
I love the through line, by the way. We did not plan that, I promise. So let's go into the how, because we've each arrived at a through line and a point, and then Kenny, you began going into the how. You called it NFTism. You call it today post-NFTism. You mentioned simplification, maybe security goes hand in hand with that, and then you mentioned physicals. Let's stay on this, the current state of the digital art market. Maybe we cast our eyes into the future and some of the points that we're landing here. What can be done to foster the market, to make it, let's say, NFTism again? And then, Kenny, I'll stay on you maybe if you want to add a follow-up comment or one more.
I promise I'll make it very short, I swear. You nailed it when you said, like, I need to be fueled. I have a family, and I keep trying not to collect any more art, but this is the wrong time of year in the wrong jurisdiction to have that mentality. So I'm failing miserably before I even got to Basel. In Zurich, I started already. But you just hit it right on the head. When there's a recession, when all the speculators are washed out of the system, whether it's in the traditional art world, which we're seeing now, and all of a sudden people are like left with their pants down. All the speculative art can't be speculated on, and everyone's selling for a loss and grateful for it. I mean, I would say 80% of the last works that were sold at Sotheby's and Christie's and Phillips were sold at losses. No one will admit to it. I will. I mean, I always say my loss is your gain when I need money. But you just hit it right on the head, connoisseurship. With digital art, I was looking in the fair at RCM Gallery from Paris. They have a booth filled with art from the 50s and 60s, all created with code. It's extraordinary. It's the most incredible thing. Digital art, the history is amazing. So we need to get back to a point of loving art, passion for art. That's my whole education, is just passion for art, and a period of more appreciation for art, for the sake of art, is where we need to be and where we are for other reasons, but it's fine.
Go ahead, Dirk. Follow that up. Pragmatically, what is your philosophy on how we turn this corner?
Well, to begin with, I think we need to refocus on digitization as a tool for artists rather than a tool for market growth or investment trigger. And that will also allow us to judge it with artistic or artists' criteria. As we both agree, for once, you need to want it because you love it, and that is kind of nothing data can actually show or can pin down. And that's the magic of our market, that we are actually dealing with something that is undescribable by data. This is what makes data so fascinating. It's also that's the reason why we have so little data, and our data is so utterly unreliable. I mean, when you compare the art market data, even as one pool, which is not existing as one pool or not accessible as one pool, with what Amazon must have or whatever MasterCard must have, that is just like a gazillion to one. But still, it's an interesting new focus. It's a new lens.
Staying on you for one point, how do you communicate the incommunicatable, the magic of it?
Well, human mankind has found words to describe it, and the Romans already began. Well, before that, the Egyptians we know of, and maybe it was even earlier. So we found ways to describe, to communicate, to make our feelings understood, to also to judge and to measure. This is what art history is about in the end. So we can do that. We know that we can. It's just that for that new chapter, we also need a new vocabulary, and this is what we are working on. And money is not necessarily the key word in that vocabulary. It is, we know, in the 21st century, even for physical art, has become an important factor in the canonization process because it creates awareness and a platform. But still, it has become too big at the same time as the digital art entered, and maybe we need to differentiate a bit, kind of more precisely.
Aleksandra, Tezos may be the cultural capital of the blockchain currently. How do you communicate that message?
Oh my God, I have so many hot takes. I'm like holding myself back.
Feel-
I don't disagree with anyone. I do think, just taking a step back, digital art existed since the 50s. It was always physical. There were a few galleries in the world actually representing digital artists. Barely anyone cared. What NFTs really allowed is a new medium of proliferation for art where the audience was in the millions. And I think this is something very often overlooked. And once the price points came in, then we saw the institutional sort of interest, you could say, in the space. And I think these things come in waves, right? Sometimes there's a good market, things are going well. Sometimes there's a bear market, things aren't going so well. I think what really I admired and about the people working at Trilitech before me and people sort of like at the Tezos Foundation is these waves never really affected the support and dedication to art. If you look at the Serpentine two-year partnership introducing sort of like the more established artists in the art world to the blockchain in a very sophisticated, meaningful way. If you look at the partnership that the Museum of Moving Image or MoMA or Musée d'Orsay in Paris, like if you look at it around the world, some of the most big and important institutions adopted blockchain thanks to the Tezos Foundation. So that message was put forward in a million different ways. Art Basel's first blockchain presence, Tezos Foundation. Like the amount of work that has been done to introduce the general public is immeasurable across the ecosystem. But the challenge when I stepped into my role that I saw the most is we're targeting people who are still so far away from understanding the culture, the new digital culture that was born. So a lot of people are trying to sort of like bring it back to what it was in the traditional gallery system. You know, we need to frame this, we need to contain it into a packaging that we understand. But you mentioned Kim Asendorf and the work that he does, and he's like, I don't like physical, you know, like the code is supposed to be unleashed, it's supposed to fit any screen, it's supposed to be adaptive, it's supposed to really take advantage of everything that technology has to offer us because it's the reflection of our time. And I think there's truth in both. I think there's always opportunities, but if we really, and I think this is one of the biggest challenges the traditional art world faces, is how do you onboard new collectors, right? Because, you know, people's interests change, people's attention span right now is of a rabbit. And I think that's where digital art has a really big opportunity because it not only caters to a completely different set of audience. I've seen people collecting like baseball cards and next thing you know, they have a digital art fund. Like the amount of sort of like journeys I've seen, and same with traditional collectors starting to collect artists like Xcopy, you know, which is a completely sort of different genre, is incredible. So I think, just not to talk too long, I think there's definitely a lot of inspiration from both sides. And I think we should not just replicate, but we should also learn from each other for us to really push, as you say, the message more forward.
Sophie, what's one helpful or surprising thing that data can teach us?
Can teach us? It's interesting. A few years ago, I attended a TIFAF conference on the art market. And one of the audience questions was to a speaker, what do you think is the future of the market? You know, and I was prepared for a long, very interesting answer, but he just said, you know what? The art market goes up and the art market goes down. I thought that's great, you know, and until recently I would have agreed with that. But now I feel like we've come to a point where there's a serious correction. It's not up or down, it's a serious correction that's taking us in a different direction. And I think this change of direction is happening naturally. There's not really anything we can do about it. I think it was there, it was ready, we were feeling it. And there's a new generation of collectors coming in and they have, and the data supports this, different values. So I feel like if you look at the data, the amount of transactions has increased last year, but the value of the sales have gone down. And you know this, you've read the report probably on Artnet, and you've probably all read that. And I think that shows us that this new generation, yes, they're using data to support their purchasing process and to get, you know, confidence in what they're buying, that it's a value that they're happy to pay, and they're not paying too much, for example, or they're not selling for too little. But I don't think it's more investment. I think it is, in fact, more passion on a lower price level. And I think this entry point of new collectors, it makes me very hopeful for the future.
Aleksandra, you brought up something very interesting. The origin story of certain collectors does start through a financialized lens. And there are certain collectors who stay very financialized in nature, but there also are collectors who begin to curve off and become staunch art advocates, as you mentioned, either launching funds or throwing themselves headfirst into something else. Let's play with that for a moment. Kenny, how would you communicate to that kind of a person? The financialized through and through, they're interested. You want to maybe expand the message beyond the data.
Well, you were saying, how do you develop an eye or connoisseur? I always say one eye is not enough. You need two good eyes. And the way you become a connoisseur, I mean, I think it's amazing because one of the most integral aspects of art is something the market frowns upon, which is like a constant restlessness and curiosity. I generally get along with children and animals. You could see why. And because they have a boundless curiosity. And some of the artists, I curated a show in London that opened 2 weeks ago at Thomas Dane Gallery of an American artist, Paul Tech. He died of AIDS tragically prematurely in '88, but he flitted from one body of work to another, and he traveled abroad, and he had a very international perspective too early before means of communication were taking hold, and he suffered immensely for it. And what the art success affirms success in the market, and that's sad. But I think people need to be encouraged to trust their instincts and their intuitive reaction to things based. How do you develop a sense of connoisseurship? Through learning, through reading. I teach for 30 plus years to learn. I love to learn. I've never given the same lecture twice. And so really there has to be a will and an intent and an open mind. I mean, I did an NFT with this phenomenal traditional art collector from Greece called Dakis Ioannou, and he's 83. So it's a complete misconception that technology and all of this stuff we're discussing is a youth-driven market. That's absurd. All it takes is will, an open mind, and a desire. So I think you can't push it. You can't. People need to want it. Now that people see the financial incentives have diminished vastly, I still think we're back to things will go up, things will go down. Art's been coveted since it came off the wall of a cave. There's been 100 articles about how the youth is not interested in collecting anymore. They want experiences. I never met a person in my life that wanted an experience. The fuck wants you have an experience every time you walk out the door. I mean, I don't get
look at a gallery. That's an experience.
And yeah, so anyway, I just believe in art. Art makes blood pressure go down, anxiety be reduced. It's like having a dog in an old age home, and I need it as much as possible. It imbues my life with meaning. It gives me hope. My kids make it, a few of them, and it's wonderful. It's a thread of communication and expression, and it's important to our well-being, and I wish more politicians went to see art. Amen.
Aleksandra, I'd love to give you a shot on that topic before I slightly change subjects. You did bring it up in the first place, so please do go a level deeper on that. When you do encounter that financialized layer and see it for what it is with the potential to change and follow a different path, how do you foster that?
So basically, just to understand your question correctly, when you see the narrative is becoming too focused on the financial layer and less so on everything else.
Yeah, go with that.
Okay. Oh, by the way, art makes your blood pressure go down, but artists make it go up. Just from anyone who has worked with artists, as an artist. Okay, so back to financialization. I think it serves its purpose. It's an amazing sort of like virtue signal. And we do see, obviously, 24 hours of art essentially started as the highlights of top sales. And I think for especially a lot of people, it definitely drives them intuitively to go and pursue something. And there are many ways you can counter that. Like something we do is in collector interviews. Like we do in-depth collector interviews, and as part of it, we obviously ask collectors to highlight some of the best works in their collection, the ones that they're most proud of, but also artists to keep an eye on. And I myself actually discovered so many artists that maybe I wasn't paying attention to, and bear in mind, like we have around, 30,000 artists who are active across the Tezos ecosystem. So it's hard sometimes to keep an eye on everyone. So there's definitely an interesting way to discover that. And I think that is what I enjoy the most, especially like there's this saying that collectors on Tezos is people who love art and through art discover crypto. So, and it might be a little bit different across some other ecosystems or networks, but this is where sort of like the collector's role completely shifts, and we put a mirror and we give them opportunities to become almost like ambassadors. I think a perfect example, and this is going to be on the panel on I think Wednesday or Thursday during the museum day, is we launched an initiative with Regina from MOMI, the community curation, where we invited 10 ambassadors, largely collectors from the ecosystem who had a voice. And we allowed them to nominate the artists that are going to be exhibited in the museum for the next show. It was last fall. And what happened is, naturally, the collectors turned into prominent ambassadors of the artists. And I think all of the artists were relatively emerging artists. So I think, again, coming back to programming, and that's why I'm so excited about it, like most of our programming is focused on creating that artists ecosystem within which more creators can thrive. And I think that's sort of like how we address that countermeasure.
Dirk, what are you noticing in the collector world? From either side, a digital art-centric collector, contemporary collector, cross-pollination between?
Well, I think when we at Christie's kind of toyed with the idea to start offering digital art, we thought our audience would be the tech crowd who is working with tech and is interested in what artists do with their technology, and B, the cutting-edge contemporary art collector who is always interested in the latest artistic expression, and maybe an overlap. In reality, we totally overestimated the interest of the classic collector, and we totally underestimated the size of the tech crowd. So we were totally blown away to see kind of the traffic on our website coming from the tech crowd, if I may describe it as that. But at the same time, it took quite a while to convince the other side that this is kind of a legitimate artistic language. And as we've just heard, the price points came in, and the Beeple prize was the first big price point. That was a door opener, maybe for the wrong reasons, but the door is open, so you don't mind. So it is growing, but much slower than initial figures would indicate.
Sophie, any insights on that front from the collector side? I know you've said in general a bit slow, but are there any green shoots? Is there anything you're noticing, whether it's a category of art, whether it's a collector type, that is positive in nature?
I think on Artnet, if you're looking at the collectors that purchase over Artnet auctions, what we've been noticing is that the category that performs best, and this jars with this vibes with the data that we have, is prints and multiples. So those are the lower price points, entry price points, and also then of course people mainly purchasing from mobile devices, younger collectors, mainly from the US and Europe, some from Asia. And this is what we've noticed on our website. And in fact, the last few months have gone reasonably well for us despite the economic downturn and the insecurity. And I think perhaps it's because people are comfortable buying online. Perhaps it's younger buyers. Perhaps it's because they think, well, the market is a bit down now, so let's see, maybe I can buy the dip. Maybe this is the opportunity for me. And actually, in fact, that's something I would encourage, is not to say, oh dear, there's, the market's not doing well, let's stay away and wait for it to improve. It's what Kenny said, trust your instincts and look at what you like, maybe use some data to support the purchasing process, and then now, really go in and support the artists that you love. And I think this is what we're seeing.
It's a wonderful message. It sounds like a precursor to art market go up.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I think we must be coming up on time, so I want to go around the horn one last time. Final words to the crowd, to the Digital Art Market Day. And Sophie, we'll start with you.
You know what? I think from my statement earlier, buy for passion, but with an investment view would be my statement. Look for the art that you love, and then obviously go on Artnet, look at the data, and make sure you make a smart purchase for something that you will love for a long time.
Wonderful message. Aleksandra.
Yeah, I think if you're looking to collect, you have to understand your almost like collector's thesis. Are you looking for it just as an investment? Are you genuinely a passionate person who wants to support the artists? And then you can start looking for people who are leaders in this space, and they often, through the articles they write or the panels they talk to, or let's be honest, most of us spend 90% on Twitter, because that's where 90% of the artists in this space are. It's pure as simple as that. And I think that if you're genuinely interested in this market, it might be worth doing so and looking for areas where actually the people who are passionate in this space live, rather than receiving the news, which is trickled down, politicized, commercialized, and packaged just for you with some other interest in mind. Like, if you're genuinely curious, I would advise just going to the source. And more often than not, you can just directly speak to the artists themselves.
Dirk.
Sounding like a broken record, I think it's very exciting times to be in when you happen to be interested in art. I follow you, you need two eyes, but then times have never been better to kind of explore a new technology, a new artistic medium, when you're interested in art and technology. It's now, and it's so easy, it's so accessible, it's for everybody, so enjoy that.
You said we only agreed on one thing. I'd like to discuss further what we've disagreed about in the past. I think that I haven't been to the main fair. I've seen the Unlimited yesterday, and I've seen the two amazing venues of this digital art fair, Mile, whatever it has. Anyway, and I think the best things in town are the digital art fair, which should be, if Basel had half a brain, they would own it and work with the team. It's an extraordinary effort, and it's wonderful. And the Basel Social Club has this energy that you can't contain. I went there yesterday, later in the day. It opened a few days ago, and it was wonderful. And it was filled with discoveries. I made discoveries at the digital fair yesterday. I made discoveries at the Basel fair. I didn't make any discoveries at the Basel, where the successful things are affirmed. But just, if you love art, open your heart, open your mind, and look, and don't, there's just too much judgment and pigeonholing and compartmentalizing in a field. Nothing's changed. Yes, things go up, things go down. It will soldier on because it's human nature to make things and to be creative. Thank God. So I'm just grateful to be here. Thank you guys so much for listening and for having me. I'm just really appreciative. There's nowhere else I would rather be in the world right now except with my kids. And I'm thankful. Thank you.
It will soldier on because it's human nature. Thank you, Kenny. Thank you, Dirk. Thank you, Aleksandra. Thank you, Sophie. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you, everybody.
If anyone has any questions, I'm ubiquitous. As my kids will say, I'm always overexposing myself. But if you have any questions, DM me, Twitter. I refuse to call it that, or Instagram. You're all welcome, and you could ask me anything, and I love to try to help people and facilitate things.